Hello, Helen here. Today I'm doing another Valentine's card, but this time I've decided to drag out some of my older products. Just like you might have some lying around that you could use for this card. I'm going to start by doing some partial cutting of a frame. Now I'm using this Sue Wilson lattice frame die set, and I'm going to use the one of the frames, but I don't want a rectangular card this time. I want a more square shape, so I'm going to partially cut the rectangle out and then alter it. I'll show you what I mean. Now I have an e-bosser that I do my die cutting with, and unfortunately the die has to face upwards. If you have got a die that's placed facing down and you can put your top plate on the die, it's far easier to see, but I'm doing it a bit blind, so what I'm doing is feeling for the top of the rectangle frame, and I'm just going to put my plate on just below that, so I'm not going to cut out the full rectangle and put it through my e-bosser. Now what you usually do with partial die cutting is you then put the die back on and slot it back into place with the die cut that you've just done, and you usually feel it sort of click in, but because this die's got stitching either side of the line, you can get a little bit wrong, and I did my first attempt wrong and the cutting line was just about a couple of millimeters out. So I'm going to flip the die over and then I can see where the cutting lines are on the die and match it up with the part that I've already cut, and then I put the plate back on the die over the cardboard, but I just make sure that I'm not cutting right to the very edge, and then I put it back through the e-bosser. For this card I went through some of my old supplies and I found this heart die. It's a Nellie Snellen die. Now I think she now does dies just called Nellie Dies. I think it might be the same person, but anyway, this set's called Hearts and Swan, and it's just got a really lovely little sort of lacy edging around it, but you could just use a stitched heart or a stackables heart or any die hearts that you've got for this card, because really you're just using it as the shape to be able to put the punch flowers onto it. I've gone ahead and cut out a lacy border. This is a signature die by Joanna Sheen, and it's called Harriet Lace, so it's one of my favourites, so I've cut one of those out and I'm going to just put that to the bottom of the square stitch panel that I've cut out. So I'm just putting some Cosmic Shimmer glue around the back of the die, and then I'll stick that down, just centering the 2 points to the outside of the card panel just to make sure it's even. I popped some fun foam on the back of the panel, and then that can be stuck down with some tape runner onto the card base. Now, also digging around in my craft supplies, I've found a couple of flower punches. One of them's a Carl punch called Sakura, and it's the medium sized one, and I found a little punch that's just got like a little star flower on it. I've made some of the flowers already, but I'll show you how I made them. So I punched out one of the Sakura flowers and 3 of the little star flowers. Now I'm just going to give them just a very slight little bit of shaping with an old mouse mat and an embossing tool, and I'm just running the embossing tool from the outside of the petal of the bigger flower into the centre, just to give it just a slight curving, and then I'm running it just in a spiral motion in the very centre of the tiny flowers just to give it a slight cupping. I'm going to use Aileen's tacky glue for doing these flowers. It's a nice thick glue, so I'm just putting a blob onto a piece of scratch card, and then I can pick the flowers up with my tweezers and dip them into the glue before placing them into position. So I'm just putting one of the small flowers into the larger Sakura petal, and then I'm just putting one on top of the other of the tiny petals to make a smaller filler flower, and I'm just alternating the petals for those two. Now I have flattened it down a bit when I've done the gluing, so I'm just trying to lift up the petals, but the easiest way is just to put it back on the mat and just push into the centre and it'll cup it again. I have made a whole lot of other of both types of flowers just to save time with the video, but before I start with that, I'm just grabbing another punch, which is just a small little leaf punch, and I'm going to punch some green leaves out. I'm just going to have a few around the border of the heart just to fill up a few gaps. So I'm now ready to start putting the flowers onto the heart. It doesn't matter really where you start, but I'm going to start at the top right hand edge of the dip of the heart, and I'm just going to start dabbing each flower into the glue and putting it onto the heart. I use the leaves to fill in some gaps around the outside of the heart, and the little tiny wee flowers just as fillers where the sakura flowers don't quite meet and there's a gap. So I just continue to do that and fill up the heart bit by bit. I'll just play a little bit of music while I finish putting the flowers onto the heart, and I'll be back when I'm ready to do the next stage. Once I've finished putting all the flowers onto the heart, I'm just going to have a little bit of a poke around with my tweezers and pick up any petals that might have got squashed by the other flowers, and make sure everything's standing sort of straight and not fallen over. And then I'm just going to pop that aside just to dry for a little bit. Once the flowers have dried off a little bit so they're not going to move around, I'm ready to put in the centres of the flowers. Now I'm going to use this Cosmic Shimmer Pearlescent PVA. It's a golden pearl it's called, but you could use any of the other products around, like liquid pearls or the new Nouveau crystal drops or any of those. Just make sure that it's something that you can do quite small dots of. This one's particularly good because you can get a really tiny wee dot out of it, and it's quite easy to control because it's got a very fine nozzle, and it's also very good to get into some of the little nooks and crannies of the filler flowers that are underneath the other ones. Again, I've put that aside just to dry for a little bit, just so that I don't smear any of the dots, and then I'm going to mount the heart onto my card base with some fun foam. I've pre-made a sentiment with gold embossing powder just to go with the gold and white theme, and that says I love you, and I've made that into a banner which I'm going to just pop over the left edge of the heart and trim it off where it overhangs the edge of the card. The final touches, I've pre-tied a little organza white bow, which I'm just going to put to the right of the card on the border, and I've got a couple of pearl accents, and I'm just going to decide which one I'm going to put into the centre of that, and that's the card finished. Thank you for joining me today. Please subscribe if you haven't already so that you can see the next project. Feel free to ask any questions or leave any comments below in the comment section. Give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed the video, it helps me to see that you have. Have a great week and we'll see you next time. Bye for now.